Fog was already sliding down from the coast range when my shift started, dragging a cold gray curtain across the bay. It moved slow at first, then thickened without warning, swallowing the harbor lights one by one. Nights like this aren't unusual along the Oregon coast, but the way it settled, low, heavy, almost deliberate, made the water feel smaller than it was. I kept the patrol boat at a steady crawl, spotlight off, listening to how the hull cut through the surface. The engine hummed clean, the radio was quiet. Everything felt normal enough until the wind stopped, not faded, not eased, stopped. A full breath of air froze in the middle of the bay, like someone had pinched the world shut. The lines on my jacket didn't flutter, the flag on the stern hung dead. And with the wind gone, the silence hit fast, thick, wrong. Then the water went flat. Not calm, flat, tight as a sheet pulled across something underneath it. My bow wake spread out, thinned, and then just disappeared. I leaned over the railing, trying to catch the way the light bent on the surface, but the fog smothered everything past a few feet. Out on the outer jetty, the beacon started blinking. Once, twice, then out of rhythm completely. That beacon runs on a set pattern. Every patrol officer knows it by heart. Tonight it pulsed faster, then slower, like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. The fog made it even stranger. Each blink softened too quickly, as if the light was being swallowed before it reached me. The radio cracked. "Lucas, you still out there?" Mara's voice, but doubled. Her normal tone first, then another version layered a second behind it. Same words, slightly distorted, almost like a repeat broadcast. I held the mic. "Yeah, I'm here." My own voice came back through the speaker, not instantly, late, a beat behind, lower pitch, breathing different. I froze with the mic halfway back to its clip. The distortion wasn't from static. It sounded too clean, too intentional, like someone repeating me from inside the channel. I cut the radio off. A few seconds passed. The fog thickened until the world shrank to the edge of my deck. I turned the radio back on, waiting for it to hiss to life. Instead, the radio vibrated. My phone, too. A faint tremor, short and light, rolling across the console like something had tapped the hull from underneath. Not hard, not aggressive, just enough to let me feel it, enough to say it was there. Nothing was technically wrong, but nothing felt right. And as I stood there, breath held, listening to the flat, breathless water around my boat, one thought wouldn't leave me. Something was sharing the bay with me, something below, something occupied. Most mornings start the same for me. I check the moorings along the inner docks, make sure no lines are fraying, no cleats pulled loose from overnight swells. After that, it's the channel markers, those metal spines sticking out of the bay, humming with low static when the wind hits them right. If one starts drifting off position, it confuses half the boats coming in. People like to pretend GPS solves everything, but out here, the water still has the final say. Tessa usually meets me near the breakwater if she's not running a dive call. She's quicker than I am with spotting currents, better at reading how the surface folds over itself when the tide shifts. "You see that seam?" she'll say, pointing at something I swear wasn't there a second ago. I nod like I saw it too. She doesn't need to know I'm guessing. Most of this job is guessing anyway. Sheriff Ellis keeps the land side of things tight. He's been here longer than anyone I know. Old school, sharp, steady with his words. Doesn't like rumors. Doesn't like theories. Doesn't like half the things people drag into his office about what they saw on the water at night. "Weather makes fools of all of us," he said once. He probably meant it as a joke, but his face didn't move when he said it. I go home to a house sitting near the edge of Siuslaw National Forest, just far enough inland that I don't hear the buoys at night, but close enough to feel the Pacific wind cut through the trees. The windows in that place don't seal anymore. The frames warped years before I bought it. So every night the cold finds a way in, slipping around the corners, under the door, down the hall. Some nights I lie awake listening to it whistle through the siding like it's looking for something. Nolan drops by the harbor sometimes. He lives near the rocky stretch south of the jetty, just a cabin, a dog, and too much free time. He has a way of mentioning things like he's trying not to sound concerned. "Saw the beacon blinking weird again," he told me once, leaning on the railing with a thermos in his hand. "Off pattern. Same as the other night." I told him I'd check it. I didn't tell him it was already on my mind, because little things had been happening. Waves changing direction for a couple seconds. Not long, just enough to notice, enough to wonder if your eyes misread it. A soft knock under the patrol boat during a perfectly still morning. It didn't feel like driftwood bumps. This felt intentional, like fingertips testing the underside of the hull. And then there's that feeling I get on deck sometimes, when the fog runs thin and the horizon blurs. The sense that someone is standing behind me, close enough to reach out, close enough that if I turned around fast enough, I might catch them shifting out of the corner of my vision. But every time I check, nothing. Just wet air, rope coils, metal rails. This morning Tessa flagged me down before I could pull the boat from its slip. She had that look, the one she gets when something isn't adding up. "Skiff came in upside down at first light," she said. "Rescue dragged it in. No wind, no swell, just flipped." "Any injuries?" I asked. "No one was aboard when they found it." She paused. "Lucas, you need to see the hull." We walked over to where the boat was propped on blocks. The underside was slick with brine, patches of seaweed clinging like old bandages. But what she wanted me to see were the marks, 3 long, shallow lines dragging from bow to stern. Not gouges, not scrapes. More like something had pressed against it and pulled, each line perfectly parallel to the next. I crouched down and ran a thumb along one. The groove was smooth, too smooth. Tessa crossed her arms, waiting for me to say something. I didn't, because I didn't have anything to say that made sense. On the way back to the patrol boat, she said, "Look, maybe it hit debris." 3 identical pieces of debris? I asked. She didn't answer. By noon, fog had started pushing back in from the Pacific, thick enough to tint the air gray, thin enough that you could still make out shapes moving behind it. I kept working, checking lines, logging conditions, pretending routine mattered. But my mind kept drifting back to the skiff, to the parallel marks no current could have carved, to the knock under my hull, and the echo on the radio last night. Sleep hasn't been easy lately. The house feels different. The nights feel longer. When I'm lying in bed, I swear I can hear the water breathing against the shore, slow and steady, like it's settling into my walls. Late in the afternoon, the fog climbed higher and pressed in around the harbor. I stepped out onto the pier, listening to the creak of wood under my boots. Everything sounded normal. The gulls, the faint hum of distant engines, the quiet rush of tide. Then all of it dropped out. 2 full seconds of silence. Total, clean, empty, like the world exhaled and forgot to inhale again. When the sound rushed back, nothing had changed, but everything felt different. Another misalignment, and I was nowhere near the water this time. The misalignment on the pier didn't leave me. It stuck under my skin the rest of the day, humming low like a wire with too much current in it. By sundown, fog had slid back over the harbor again, thicker this time, pulled tight over the water like a sheet. I could still hear the familiar sounds, the clank of rigging, the slap of tide on the pilings, but they felt muted at the edges, like something was covering my ears from the inside. Reports started coming in before my night shift even officially began. First one was from a trawler off the South Point. The captain said the lights on his mast were blinking in a pattern he didn't recognize. Long, short, short, long, repeating back at him like a mirror. When he reset the breakers, they returned to normal. 20 minutes later, a crab boat called in. They claimed they were drifting against the current, not slow drift either, 20, maybe 30 seconds of the boat moving backward like someone had hooked a line to the bow and pulled. Then, a woman from the cottages along the inlet phoned the station. She said the tide was low, the rocks were exposed, and she swore she heard someone call her name from the water. Not yelling, whispering. Quiet enough she thought it was the wind at first, but the wind wasn't blowing. I tried to file each incident under equipment failure, optical illusion, tired civilians, but together they didn't want to sit in a neat box. I kept hearing last night's static, my own voice replayed through the speaker, the way the water tightened under the hull. By full dark, I was out on the bay again. Jace met me at the dock, coffee in one hand, flashlight in the other. He looked tired, but that wasn't new. "You hear the chatter tonight?" he asked as he stepped aboard. "Yeah," I said. "You buy any of it?" He shrugged. "People see weird stuff on the water. Always have." "Seeing weird stuff is one thing," I said. "Hearing your name is another." That made him glance at me. Not long, just enough for me to know he understood exactly what I meant. We pushed off and moved toward the outer moorings. Fog crowded the surface so tightly it felt like we were sailing over a sheet of wet glass. The beams from our deck lights cut only a few yards ahead before dissolving. When we reached the third mooring, Jace leaned over the bow. "You seeing this?" he asked. I moved beside him. The anchor line of the vessel tied there wasn't angled the way it should have been. It wasn't sloping out with the current. It wasn't even drifting. It was pulled straight down. Perfect vertical tension, like the boat wasn't being held by the mooring at all, but by something under it. "That doesn't make any sense," Chase muttered. "No," I said. "It doesn't." He knelt, reaching toward the rope as if touching it would clarify something. I caught his arm before he did. "Don't," I said. He looked at me again. "You think something's under it?" "I think I don't know what's under it." He nodded once. We logged the anomaly and moved on. Back at the harbor, Tessa was waiting near the rescue shed, pacing. She waved us over before we'd even tied off. "I found something," she said, holding up a waterproof case. Inside was a GoPro, scratched, chipped, but intact. "Came off the skiff that flipped this morning," she said. "Pulled it from a snag near the inlet." We played the footage on her tablet. Most of it was routine, two guys hauling traps, laughing at something off camera. Then the boat shook lightly. One of them glanced over the side. "What was that?" he asked. The camera holder didn't answer. He panned the GoPro toward the surface. The water looked normal at first, rippling, reflecting the sky. Then the ripples slowed. Not eased, slowed, as if someone had placed a sheet of glass under the surface and smoothed everything flat. The laughter stopped. One of the men whispered something I couldn't make out. The last second of footage showed nothing but stillness, perfect, impossible stillness. Then the camera cut out. I exhaled. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. "Tell me you saw that," Tessa said quietly. "I saw it," I said. Jace swallowed. "Could be a glitch in the file." Tessa shot him a look. "Come on." We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. Before my next patrol run, Nolan flagged me down at the pier. He had that same thermos, that same hesitant expression he always wore when he wasn't sure if what he'd witnessed was worth sharing. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Yeah." He led me along the walkway toward the rocks near his cabin. Waves lapped against the stone with a lazy rhythm, like they were half asleep. Fog hung low, brushing our ankles. "Right here," he said, pointing at a flat ledge. "A few nights back. I was out late, couldn't sleep." "What happened?" "I saw a shadow out there." He motioned toward the water. "Only thing is, it wasn't moving with the tide. Tide was going left, shadow moved right, like it didn't care what the water was doing. You sure it wasn't a log? I know what logs look like, Lucas. His voice tightened. This wasn't that. We stood there in silence, staring at the slow roll of fog over the bay. I didn't see anything unusual, but the air felt heavy, like the pressure had dropped around us without warning. Just thought you should know, he said before heading back toward the cabins. I stayed a minute longer, listening, waiting, thinking I'd catch something if I held still enough. Nothing came. Back on the patrol boat, I took a slow pass along the inner harbor. The water felt wrong tonight, thicker somehow, like it was resisting the hull. I kept the engine low, letting the fog swallow the bow. Halfway through the run, the boat shifted. Not from a wave, not from current. It dipped. Just one slow, heavy motion downward, directly beneath me, like something big had settled under the hull and pushed the water aside. I felt the pressure rise through the metal. The deck under my boots vibrated. A cold line of air crawled up my spine. The water next to the boat dimpled inward. A long, shallow depression, exactly the shape of something standing beneath the surface. I didn't lean over. I didn't breathe. I didn't speak. The pressure faded a moment later, leaving nothing but a trembling wake that the fog immediately swallowed. I finished the sweep early and tied off at the dock, pretending I needed to check equipment. I didn't. I just needed distance. Around midnight, the patrol radio in the cabin clicked on by itself. No chatter, no static, just a clean, empty channel. Then a voice. My voice. "Copy that," it said. "Heading in." But I hadn't said that tonight. I'd said it 12 hours earlier. The radio fell silent again. I waited for Mara to call in to explain some glitch in dispatch, but the channel stayed dead. After a full minute, I switched it off and stepped onto the deck. The fog felt closer than before. The next morning, Ellis called me into the office. His face had that look he got when fishermen showed him pictures of sea monsters, or when tourists insisted they saw figures on the cliffs. "I don't want people stirring up nonsense," he said. "Strange nights, strange eyes, keep things grounded." "It's not nonsense," I said before I could stop myself. He raised an eyebrow. "You seeing something I should know about?" I hesitated. "Just patterns. Patterns don't mean anything unless you make them mean something." I left without arguing. There was no point. He wouldn't believe me until the water swallowed half the harbor. Later, when I got back to my patrol boat, Mara called quietly over the radio. "Lucas, did you hear anything weird last night?" "Define weird," she paused. "I heard your voice on my channel from yesterday morning." My stomach tightened. "You sure?" "Yeah," she whispered. "And you didn't transmit." I didn't answer, because there wasn't anything to say. That afternoon, fog rolled in again, denser than usual. I took the boat out for a routine sweep, staying close to the channel. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Ripples touched the hull, light ones, then none. Every ripple around me pushed outward at the same time, flattening into a perfect ring. A circle of stillness with my boat at its center, and in that moment, I understood. The pattern wasn't small anymore. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was forming around me. The call came in just past 2 a.m., a thin, broken distress signal from somewhere near the outer channel. The kind of signal that shouldn't have reached us from that distance. The kind that sounded like it had traveled through too much water before it found air. Jace was already on the dock by the time I got there, one hand on the railing, the other gripping a thermos he hadn't opened. His eyes were sharp, alert, wired in that way he got when something didn't feel right. "You hear that transmission?" he asked. "I heard enough," I said. "Let's go." We pushed off fast, the patrol boat cutting through fog so thick it felt solid. The ocean swallowed our spotlight in less than 10 feet. Everything outside the deck was gray on gray, featureless, shapeless, depthless, the kind of fog that turns the world into a hallway with no walls. As we cleared the harbor mouth, the wind died again, instantly, just like the night before, like something hit a switch. Jace looked at me. I didn't look back. I knew the expression he had on, half curiosity, half dread, the same one that had been growing in me since the misalignment started. "Engine steady," he said, checking the gauges. "We should be hitting the outer channel in 5. "Assuming the fog lets us." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, assuming that." We kept moving. The water felt thick, syrupy almost, pushing against the hull with more resistance than it should. I pulled back on the throttle a little, more out of instinct than caution. Then the boat stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The engine kept running, humming evenly, but the patrol boat didn't move an inch. "What the hell?" Jace muttered. He checked the gauges again, tapping them like they might jump back to reality. "We didn't hit anything." "We're in open water," I said. "There's nothing to hit." But something had us. I could feel it. The hull felt anchored, weighted, like hands pressing upward from the depths. "Reverse?" Jace asked. I nodded. He eased the throttle back. The engine responded cleanly. The boat didn't. We stayed locked in place. Fog drifted past the bow in long, lazy sheets, rolling over the deck like breath. "I don't like this," Jace whispered. Before I could answer, the starboard side dipped. The water there moved downward, slow at first, then deeper, deeper, like a massive weight had just settled beneath the surface. A dimple formed, wide and unnatural, the kind of shape water shouldn't hold. Jace leaned over the edge, squinting into the gray wash. "Is the anchor caught?" he asked. "We're not anchored." "I know, I just want to check the line." He crouched down, bracing himself on the rail. His flashlight beam cut into the fog, then vanished as if the air had swallowed it. He leaned a little farther. "Do you see anything?" I asked. "No, but something's pulling." A metallic ping snapped through the hull. Sharp, clean, wrong, the sound of metal being stressed past its design. Before I could react, the whole boat tilted hard to starboard, 15 degrees at least, yet the water was flat around us. No swell, no wave, nothing to justify the shift. "Jace!" I grabbed the edge of the console as the deck slid under my boots. He lost his footing. It happened too fast. One moment he was crouched, steady enough. The next, his hand slipped on the wet rail, his flashlight skittering across the deck. He fell sideways. Not a flail, not a struggle, just a clean drop over the edge. No scream, no splash, no sound at all, as though he didn't fall into water, as though he fell into nothing. "Jace!" I lunged to the side, grabbing the rail, leaning out. All I saw was fog drifting over the surface. No ripples, no bubbles, not even disturbed mist. "Jace, answer me!" I shouted. The radio crackled to life behind me. My own voice poured out of the speaker. "Jace, answer me!" Only lower, stretched, breathing different. I froze, half hanging over the side, half inside my body, unable to process which direction reality had just taken. The radio repeated the call again, slower this time, like someone was practicing the shape of my words. "Stop!" I whispered. "Stop, stop, stop!" The radio fell silent. The fog around the patrol boat thickened at the waterline, swirling like something was moving beneath it. A soft vibration rose through the hull, subtle enough that someone else might have missed it. But I didn't miss it. Not tonight. Whatever was under us wasn't gone. It was waiting. "Come on," I whispered to the engine. My hand shook on the throttle. "Come on, move." Nothing. I pushed harder. The engine roared, rattling the deck. The bow jerked a fraction of an inch, then locked again. The boat shuddered like something had gripped the underside and wasn't letting go. Fog curled up the side of the hull in long, twisting ribbons, drawn toward the depression in the water on the starboard side. The dimple deepened. The metal beneath my boots thrummed. I forced the throttle all the way forward. The engine screamed. The hull groaned. And suddenly, we jerked free. The release was violent, like snapping a rope under tension. The boat lurched forward, throwing me against the console hard enough to knock the wind from my chest. I grabbed the wheel, fighting for control as the fog tore past us in streaks. The water behind us rippled outward, wide and slow, like something sinking back down. I didn't turn the boat around, not yet. Not until I was sure we had distance, not until I could breathe again. When I finally slowed the engine, my hands were shaking. I pulled my radio from its clip, pressed the transmit button. "Mara, do you copy?" Static, then nothing. I tried again. "Mara, do you copy? I've lost Jace. Repeat, I've lost..." The radio clicked. My voice came through, soft and warped. "Lost, lost, lost." I dropped the mic, stared at the speaker like it might grow teeth. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The channel went dead. I turned the boat around. I shouldn't have. I knew that. But I couldn't leave him. Couldn't accept that a man could fall into water and leave no trace. Couldn't accept the silence. As I approached the spot, the fog parted just enough for me to see the shape of the sea, a long, smooth plain where the dimple had been. I eased the throttle back, letting the patrol boat glide to a stop. The engine hummed. The water didn't. I leaned over the rail carefully, breath held, waiting for something, anything, to break the surface. A ripple, a bubble, a hint of current. Nothing. I called his name again, quieter this time, like maybe it mattered. "Jace, please answer." Fog drifted past my face, carrying cold with it. The water lay flat, untouched. It didn't even look wet. It looked like a sheet stretched tight over an empty frame. I lowered a gloved hand toward the surface, not touching, just close enough to feel how cold the air was above it, colder than it should have been. Something like breath moved through the fog near my wrist, a soft draw inward. I pulled back fast. No sound followed, no movement, no indication Jace had ever been there. Just silence. Silence held so tightly it felt like the bay itself was waiting for me to speak again. I didn't. I turned the boat around and headed back to shore at full throttle, fog peeling away from the bow in strips. My chest ached. My hands were numb. My voice felt like it had been scraped raw from the inside. Behind me, the water folded itself closed. No bubbles, no current, no trace, just a held breath. And whatever was under the surface, still listening. I didn't go home after filing the initial report, though I told Sheriff Ellis I would. I drove past my house instead, past the dark windows, past the forest line, past the gravel pull-off that overlooked the inlet. I kept driving until the road narrowed into a strip of cracked asphalt leading toward the outer cabins. Fog clung to the treetops like it was trying to keep up with me. Jonah's place sat at the end of a dirt turnout, a sagging fence, a porch light that flickered even when the air was still. His truck, older than anyone working harbor patrol now, leaned in the yard like it was too tired to stand straight. I killed the engine and stepped out. The chill hit instantly. The ocean was just beyond the trees, close enough that I could hear its slow, dragging breath through the branches. Jonah opened the door before I could knock. He stared at me for a moment, one hand on the frame, eyes narrowing like he needed to decide what version of me he was seeing. "You look like hell," he said. "I know." My voice felt sanded down. "I need to talk." He stepped aside. No questions, no hesitation. Inside, the cabin was warm but dim, lit only by a single lamp near a cluttered table. Charts lined the walls, old frayed, some of them drawn by hand. Knots of rope sat in piles like half-forgotten puzzles. Jonah motioned toward a chair. "Sit." I did. He poured something into a mug and slid it across the table. I didn't drink it. "You went back out there tonight," he said, not a question. "Yes." "And you felt it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He saw everything in my face. "What did it do?" Jonah asked quietly. "It stopped the boat, held it in place." My mouth tasted metallic. "It made the water change shape, like something was underneath." Jonah nodded as if he already knew the details. "And the other one? The man you were with?" "Jace," I whispered. My throat tightened. Saying it out loud made it too real. "He fell, and the water didn't react. It didn't move. It was like he didn't enter it at all." Jonah leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "That's how it happens." I looked up sharply. "You've seen this before?" He didn't speak right away. He reached for a small tin box near the lamp, opened it, and pulled out a tarnished coin. He rolled it between his fingers, staring at it like it contained something he'd been avoiding for years. "You're not the first to lose someone," he said, "and you won't be the last." "What is it?" I asked. "What's under there?" He set the coin down. "It's not a monster, if that's what you want to call it. Monsters take, monsters hunt. This thing doesn't do that." "Then what does it do?" "It approaches," he said softly. "It learns. It listens." I swallowed. "Listens to what?" "To us." A shiver crawled up my back. "You said I'm not the first. Who did you lose?" Jonah's jaw tightened for a moment, the way people look when a memory hits too hard. "A deckhand," he said. "Years ago. Young. Quick. Smarter than me, really. He saw the signs before I did." "What signs?" "The water behavior. The pressure changes. The sound dropping out." Jonah scratched at the table with a thumbnail. "We were out past the inlet, checking traps. Fog was thick. We felt the boat pull, just like you described." My pulse ticked in my neck. "And then?" "He panicked," Jonah said. "He leaned too far. The boat shifted. He went over." "Did you see it pull him down?" I asked. Jonah shook his head. "It didn't have to. Panic does most of the work." My stomach twisted. "So Jace died because he was afraid," Jonah said, finishing my sentence for me. "Not because something dragged him, because something waited for him to make the wrong move." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, breath shaking in my chest. "Then it knew. It understood what he'd do." Jonah nodded once. "It learns, Lucas. Every encounter, every sound, every vibration in the water, it remembers." I closed my eyes. "It repeated my voice tonight, through the radio." "That means it's curious about you," he said. "Curiosity is worse than aggression." I opened my eyes again. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "Tell me everything," I said. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "It reacts to light. You shine a beam long enough, it moves closer. It reacts to metal, impact, scraping, anything that vibrates through the water. And it reacts to voice. Talking pulls it in, not shouting, just talking. Speech has rhythm, tone, breath. It follows those." "And silence?" I asked. "That's the only thing that keeps it still. It's like holding your breath while something walks past you. If you stay quiet, it loses interest." For a while, I pressed my hands together to stop them from shaking. "Why me?" Jonah gave a faint, sad smile. "You talk to the water more than you realize. Every time you check that radio, every time you mutter something under your breath on deck, you've been calling to it without knowing." I stared at the floor, the boards worn thin near the chair legs. My voice came out softer than I expected. "Jace didn't deserve that." "No one does," Jonah said, "but the water doesn't care about deserving." I sat back and let the silence settle between us. Outside, wind brushed against the cabin walls, a steady, hollow sound. But under it, faint as a pulse, I could hear the ocean, slow, rhythmic, waiting. "What do I do now?" I asked. Jonah looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sympathy, maybe, or resignation. "You decide if you're going back out," he said. "Most people don't. Most people run inland, pretend they never felt anything. But you're not most people." "I can't leave it," I said. "It has Jace." "It doesn't have him," Jonah said quietly. "It just knows he's gone." "That's worse." He didn't argue. I stood slowly, legs stiff, head heavy. "If I go back out, what should I expect?" Jonah's eyes lowered to his hands. "It'll come closer. Now that it knows your voice, it'll respond faster. Now that it's heard your engine strain, it'll remember the pitch. Now that it's taken someone near you, it'll know you're paying attention." I swallowed hard. "And if I stay silent?" "It'll wait," he said, listening, sitting under the hull, tracing the vibrations you make just by standing there. "And if I panic?" He met my eyes. "Then you'll die." I didn't speak again, because there was nothing left to ask. When I left the cabin, the fog had pulled back from the tree line, leaving the sky open enough to see a thin smear of moonlight. The air smelled of cedar and salt. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the faint rumble of waves. The ocean didn't sound indifferent tonight. It sounded aware. By the time I reached my truck, my decision had already settled somewhere in my chest, heavy, unavoidable. I drove home on autopilot, headlights carving a narrow tunnel through the fog. My hands barely moved on the wheel. My mind kept replaying the rules Jonah had laid out. Talking draws it closer. Light triggers its attention. Silence keeps it still. Panic is what kills people. And somewhere in that list, Jace had been doomed long before he leaned over the edge. I pulled into my driveway, cut the engine, and sat there with my hands on the wheel. My house was dark. Too dark. The porch light flickered once, even though the air was dead still. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence hit immediately, thick enough that I could hear the faint pop of the floor settling under my weight. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't speak. I just listened. The radio on the kitchen counter clicked. I froze. A soft hum filled the room, the same frequency the patrol radios use when they connect to a channel. No static, no chatter. Then my voice came through, clean, sharp, unmistakable. "I'll handle it tomorrow." A sentence I had spoken 3 nights ago, nothing else. No replay of breath, no distortion, just perfect. The radio clicked off. The house stayed silent. Someone or something had been listening. I stayed off the water for 3 days, not because I was afraid. Fear isn't the right word anymore. It's quieter than fear, slower, something like waiting for a knock you know is coming. Sheriff Ellis filled out the paperwork for Jace's disappearance. He never said death, not once. Maybe he couldn't bring himself to use the word. Maybe he knew the ocean didn't take Jace the way it takes other men. Most days now I move differently. I speak less. My ears stay tuned to things no one else notices. The pitch of wind through the siding, the creak of the outer deck, the slight change in pressure before a storm. Everything feels heavier, like the world shifted and forgot to shift back. But it's the nights that stay with me. Around 2 a.m., the water beneath my house's deck dips. Not much, just enough that the wood settles lower than it should. Like something large is passing under it, like something pauses there, listening. The porch light flickers the same wrong rhythm the jetty beacon used the night Jace vanished. I changed the bulb twice. I tightened the wiring, but the blink still comes, long, short, long, each pulse softening too quickly, like it's being swallowed before it hits the air. The radio is worse. At 2:37 a.m. every night it exhales, a long, slow breath that isn't static. Static crackles. This moves. It pushes out of the speaker with weight, like someone leaning close enough for the mic to catch the warm edge of their lungs. I unplug it. It exhales anyway. Ellis came by this morning. He stood on my porch, hands in his jacket pockets, face set into the same tired lines it always has, but deeper now. "You really believe it's still out there?" he asked. The wind pushed fog across the driveway. The light blinked above us. I didn't hesitate. It never left. He didn't argue, but he didn't stay long after that. Some truths make people look for excuses to walk away. Tonight, I couldn't stay inside. The walls felt too close. The house felt watched. So I walked down the path toward the rocky shoreline, boots grinding against the wet gravel, fog pulling apart around my legs. The ocean breathed in and out, slow enough that each wave felt deliberate. I reached the rocks and stood there, staring at the black water dragging itself across the stones. Then the wind dropped. Just stopped. The waves recoiled outward, forming a perfect circle around the rocks beneath me. The same shape I saw the night the boat tilted, the same shape that surrounded Jace before he disappeared. Farther out through the fog, a beacon light blinked. Wrong pattern, same timing, same message I still don't understand. I stayed until the circle dissolved. Not a resolution, just an understanding. The thing under the water is still here, still listening, and now it knows me.